Okay, everybody, we're going to start project 16, which is going to be a 60-degree change elbow with a curved throat and a curved heel. On that change elbow meaning that it's going to be a 10-inch opening with an 8-inch exiting side on our dimension by 8 inches in height on that. So in your packet of information, what you got here is the rubric for everything. It says study the instructions per the plate number 21, which is on this page here. The next page, here's some general layout and some general information to set this thing up. So if you read the paragraph here, it'll go along, it'll correlate with these numbers up in these sections here, which some of these numbers have been transferred over to the third page of this packet as well, such as right here, here's point number 1, point number 3 out here, 4 and 7, 8 and 5 and so on, and 6 up there also. So this is where I'm going to start. There'll probably be a 3-part series to this by the time we get this complete. This 60-degree elbow is almost identical to the 45-degree elbow that we laid out in the previous video. So let's get at it and get started. If we look at our plan, and I'm going to go along with the layout here of basically in the reading how it said to go about laying this thing out. So what we did to start with is I've made 2 sheets, and yes, I've got these all already laid out to hopefully speed up the process so you don't have to listen to me ramble on for 25-30 minutes or something on this video. Hopefully I can keep it kind of to the point. So let's get on with it. The first thing I did is I found a part, and these are just 2 scrap pieces laying in the bin, no particular size. Just tried to make it so it was large enough to cover above and beyond this dimension. So when I bisect the 180, I can get my 90 degree this direction, and everything else shouldn't be too big of a deal, maybe a little bit longer than the part over here. So when you pivot, you can make those dimensions as well, same on both sides. So usually what I do is I just grab a cutoff of a 36-inch sheet for this small 10 by 8 cheek, and then go with there. These parts here I think are 13 by 16. Here's a ruler on there. So 15 by my height. Yeah, about 13 inches in height would be sufficient to initially cut your parts if you need a piece. So let's get at it. So if you look at the plan, we got to have a left-hand cheek, and then we've got to give it the mirror image of the right-hand cheek over here, so they're absolutely opposite of each other. This is very important that we make the left hand and right hand on this also. So first thing we did is I took my 1/2-inch dimension on the bottom of the sheet, and I made that mark on both of them. I'm going to try to do these left and right both at the same time here. The next thing I did is I had to figure out this 60-degree angle up here. Now that's really easily done. Some people would use a protractor and everything there, but I don't know if that's, yeah, a protractor is probably pretty precise, but there's a simple way to do it without even having to get a protractor out to come up to this 60-degree angle that we're looking for here. And that is to take your dividers, and what I did is I put a 1/4-inch mark up each side here at the bottom, set it on my 1/4-inch, and gave myself my starting pivot point at the bottom here. So a 1/2 inch up and a 1/4 inch in, and once I've got that, now I've got a 90-degree angle. So the next thing I did was I measured over 4 inches here, 4 inches over from my pivot point, and I laid that out with my square. So I had a 1/4 inch taken up from my pivot point, so that puts me at 4 1/4 inches on this sheet, or however you want to look at that. Just measure over that 4 inches, which is right there on that ruler. And then I backed off a 1/4 inch, and I put that mark on there as well. So I got 4 inches here from the pivot point, or rather 4 1/4 from the sheet, and then I backed off a 1/4 inch, and I made another mark 4 inches from the edge of the sheet, or 3 3/4 in between the dimensions there. And then I took my dividers, I set it on my pivot point on those 2 marks, right on my pivot point down here, and then I swung that out to my first of all 4-inch. From pivot point to 4 is the inside mark, and I struck that, and I brought this one all the way up to a 90 degree up here. And then I did the same on this sheet, the same deal, 90 degree up, making the left and the right hand out at the same time. And with that set, without adjusting it, what I did is I took it from this original point and I struck an arc somewhere up in this area here. And then from there, from my original 90 degree, where that arc is, that is now going to be my 60 degree angle all the way up to the top of the sheet. So from my pivot point down here, 1/4 inch in, 1/2 inch up, through that bisected 60 degree without adjusting anything, I made my 60 degree angle all the way up there. And then I did the same on this side here. So one more time, on my pivot point to the 4-inch, I made the whole 90, and then I brought it over here on that 1/2 inch up and 4-inch mark, and then I struck the arc, and where they bisected, right on that circle there, that was my, from my pivot point up here, my 60 degree angle all the way up. Now that I've got this 60 degree angle, I've added an additional 1/2 inch on, so I just simply measured that. Took my 1/2 inch on my scribe, marked it here and here, took my straight edge across the marks and ran that across. Same on this other one, just the opposite. 1/2 inch mark here, brought it up here, measured a 1/2 inch out, marked that one, back to my straight edge, and I made that mark. With that being complete, I've got this, both of these lines, I've got the inner 1/2 inch here and the external 1/2 inch for my slip and drive or S-clip or whatever is going on there after a while. The next thing I need to do is finish my 1/4 inch radius. If you haven't done so already, now you can reset your dividers, move it in by that 1/4 inch so you got your mark for your lock form, and then this one you really only got to go up to that 60 degree line up in there, and same on this other half. Pull that up around. So at this point I got my pivot point, I got point number 1 found, I've got point number 2 found, as well as point number 3 right here, which they've circled on this plan for you. After I've got point 3 found, I'm going to establish point number 4, which is exactly 8 inches difference. So from my 60 degree, I'm just going to measure that. Take my measuring stick here, find my 8 inch mark from here up to here, and now I've established, as they refer to it as, point number 4. And that is going to be, if I find a Sharpie, that's going to be this one right here where these two lines intersect. After I've established point 4, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my 180 degree line here and I'm going to bisect that to bring out a 90, so split it essentially. And I'm going to do that by taking my dividers, setting it on my point, set it to any random size, and then I'm going to strike an arc here. I'm going to flip it over to the other half, and I'm going to strike an arc up there. And then I'll do that on this other one as well. Once I've got my point number 4 established, set it on there, strike an arc here, and strike an arc above it. That's why the sheet has to be taller. After I've got those 2 pivots, I've got to make my dividers wider, and then from those pivot points, we're going to make an arc out here someplace, and then flip it to the other half, and then strike an arc. And where those crosshairs meet, from your original point number 4, straight down will be a 90 degree connection all the way off there. And that needs to come out quite a ways so we can establish point 6 here off the edge of the sheet later on. So that's what we've got right now. Later on, we'll add the additional 1/4 inch out here external to that, but for right now, we're going to go and we're going to establish point 5 from the original point 2 that's already given for us. So let's do that next. So point number 2 is right on the inside. Right here is point number 2. That one's point 2. From that, I'm going to measure over 10 inches per the plan, for the 10-inch opening. So if you set it on there like this here, we'll go over here 10 inches. And that is going to establish, I already got it done, establish 0.5 right here. That's number 5 from there. When I get 0.5 established, I'm going to take my square. You can do it with a square or you can bisect it, whatever you prefer. And then we're going to run the line, a square line. You can bisect 180 to do this with your dividers. And we're going to run that straight up there. And where these two lines meet, intersect here, that's going to be point number 6 right here, if you can see that. That's point 6. Once I have point 6 established on both sheets, trying to do this all at the same time, left and right here, I'm going to set my dividers on point number 6, and then I'm going to drop it down to point number 5, lock it in there, and then that's going to swing itself up to point number 7 up here. Right here is point 7. With point 7 found, I'm going to take my straight line, my 180 degrees, and I'm going to bisect that again, or find 90 degrees here, and I'm going to bring that down to establish point 8. So in order to bisect point 7, and I'm trying to do that on both of these at the same time, I'm only really doing one here right now. So we're just going to set it to some size, the bigger the better. Here on this situation, I'm going to strike an arc here, spin it around, strike an arc out here, find out where my 2 points are, and don't lose them. Sometimes you got to mark these things because they get lost in the sheet metal. So here and over here. And then with being it's 180, we got to make our dividers bigger, just slightly or something like that. Again, bigger's better. Set it on our mark, strike an arc out here, set it on the other mark, and cross, using my crosshairs on that mark. Now I've done that before. Before I had it a little bit bigger, so my crosshair was out here, but this is where my new crosshair came, and they're both exactly in line with each other. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to get a mark from point number 7 here, which I've already established. Here's point 7, and I'm going to take my straight edge through those crosshairs and run a straight line all the way down off the edge of the sheet to establish point 8, which is almost pretty close to point number 2 for this size of the part. Now it's not always the case. Like this one here, you can see my dot is right next to it here. This is point number 8. Finally, now that I've got point number 8 established, I'm going to go back to my dividers yet one more time, and then from point number 8, setting that on there, to point number 5 is how I get my arc for my outer radius, and I'm going to swing that up till we get to point 7. With that being said, we've got to add on the extra 1/4 inches for the easy edger on our lock form. So I'm just going to measure them, taking your ruler or whatever you have there, measure an additional 1/4 inch from point 5 this way, and then at point 7 I'll square that up and measure an additional 1/4 inch there, and up here on the edge of the sheet I'll put another additional 1/4 inch because there's a straight section there that is needed to be taken into account. Once I have that, we're right back to using pivot point number 8. Move it out a 1/4 inch, make the dividers bigger. And like I said, this whole time I'm using these, I'm putting the dimension on the left when they're set, and then I'm putting it on the right one. This one's already done prior to camera, so trying to save some time here for you. And then again, we'll strike that 1/4 inch from essentially 0.5 plus a 1/4 all the way up to 0.7 plus a 1/4 out there. And then finish the straight section off. We already measured them out 1/4 inch from 0.7 out, and originally this was 0.4. We added an additional 1/4 inch on there, and we'll finish that off just by locking that in there. With that, your project is pretty well ready to be cut out. Just remember, when you're cutting on these things, sometimes it's helpful to put a dashed line where you need to cut, such as out here. You know, put some dotted lines there or something so you can see it and don't get lost. Same on the inside. You find your original 4-inch mark. You're cutting to the outermost marks of the sheets. Now the bend marks, they're going to be in here. I'll make that one a solid line for you so you can see that for right now. And same with the outside. This is going to be a bend mark here along this edge, and we don't want to cut on our bend mark. We want to cut on the dotted lines there for this here. With that, I'm ready to cut this thing out using my tin snips. Okay, let's go to cutting this thing out. So again, we're going to cut the straight section first, probably a little bit easier for you, so you don't have to cut that out like that after a while. So line it up, stick it inside there, and then once you got everything lined up just how it needs to be, for the mark, for the 60-degree line with the additional 1/2 inch, we're going to cut that off. Just like that. Okay, back here at the bench, we're going to finish up cutting our radius at our I guess it would be our 3 1/4 inch mark off the pivot point to make sure we save that 1/4 inch. So I'm going to finish cutting out the next cheek. Here we got our 60-degree point cut off here. Now we just got to finish cutting out our radiuses. There's the left hand and the right hand cheek, a mirror image of one another. Let's go to notching them next, so we're not forgetting that. So notching my cheeks here, we're going to pop those corners out as they're supposed to be. Okay, now that we have our left hand and our right hand cheek all cut out, got our radiuses cut out, we got our notches in there. Now we can go to the easy edger. So let's do that now. So first pass through, I'm going to try to maintain this outside rib right where it needs to be there on the wheel to get that formation started there. And then on the second pass, usually I snug it up just a little bit here and then bring it into our inner line. You can kind of see it where the Sharpie is there, following the edge or the point of the wheel on that inner line there to finish pulling it into that 1/4 inch mark where it belongs. So same deal on the outside. And get our start going here. Run it through the edger. So there you have it, the left and the right cheek. They look pretty well identical to one another, so that's good. We'll be into our next video then, next clip, where we're going to measure the heel and the throat length, and we'll be forming them as one piece and then separating them after we run them through the lock form. So thanks for watching. That completes our cheeks. We'll be back on the next one for the heel and the throat. Talk to you later.